All right. So we have people in the room now. People are watching, and I'm sure we'll get some people coming back soon, whether it's coming back from water breaks or whatever. So, uh, yeah, for people who were not uh awake for the blockchain conference or not conference, the panel earlier. That was the international version. That was scheduled primarily to benefit our Asian participants, in particular our affiliate campus, Universal AI University in Mumbai, India. This one, it is Joseph again, but now this is more for the Americas, people who are more awake now. Some people are watching on YouTube and all that. And we do want to make sure that everyone feels like, if they're saying, hey, why is it the same people again? Because, also the AI panel had some repeat people. It's because we want to make sure that all of you are getting a session at least once at a time that is much easier for you. Obviously, when you're more awake, things stick better. You're more alert. You pick up on more things. You have more questions, stuff like that. So, hope you appreciate this session as well. Joseph is, I'm going to introduce him the way I do, and then he can tell you more about himself. When I want to impress people about him, I say Joseph is a Stanford double grad, and he actually won at Hack Duke, or not Hack Duke, at Live AI Duke last year, but his team was a split team, so they also won at Live AI Harvard because they pitched the same thing, or they built the same thing across campuses. They worked remotely, so design, develop, demo all on their preferred campus, and then they pitched on both campuses and won on both campuses. And then the team also won at the global level. And they created a company called Script Ledger, which then presented at Miami Tech Week. And they received grants from the ICP Innovation Incubator. And that was all within, I think that was all March, April last year. And since then, Joseph has already signed on some clients to, basically get people to support his company, which is focused on tokenizing gift cards. And I'm sure anyone can imagine getting anyone to sign on to your company, sign on with your company is very difficult. So obviously, congratulations to Joseph. So, that's how I introduce him when I want to impress people. When I don't want to impress people, I just say half of that, and it's still very impressive anyway. So we'll let Joseph go and fill in other gaps.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, again. So, yeah, nice to meet all of you. I'm currently at the Duke campus. If there's anyone watching that's around, feel free to come say hi. But yeah, I'm really glad to have this opportunity today. I actually have a little bit of it's a little slightly different format than the AI panel. So I have a bit of a presentation prepared. I want to talk through kind of the economics and a lot of the interesting use cases surrounding blockchain because as you guys know, blockchain didn't start with meme coins, all that. Started shortly after 2008 with Bitcoin, and even before that, there's a history of that, digital currencies and things like that. So, want to talk about some of the theory framework, and also at the end, I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing. So, yeah, I can get into it if there's nothing else in terms of intro.
Sounds good.
Um,
All right, let me turn on the screen sharing option. All right, you should be able to share screen now.
thanks, Scotty. Yeah, so today I want to talk about currency system design because a lot of the things in the blockchain space, whether you're tokenizing on top of it, on top of a blockchain, or creating a new blockchain, you're constantly thinking about the tokenomics, what the currency is for, who's going to be the originators and users, how that's going to circulate through the system. And personally, I think this topic of money is one of the most interesting topics and also one of the most highly debated and contentious topics in economics. So this is not meant to be formatted like a lecture per se. It's more just me sharing kind of my views and perspectives, and also a lot of interesting research and you know, research in the field, and also some cool use cases. So more to just like kind of expose you guys to a lot of this information. Hopefully, a lot of new inspire you guys. It's a very interesting field, right? So I I thought I was gonna do this in person, so I would have like taken a vote. Like, who do you think creates money in our current system? So our current system, most countries use a central banking system, right? So whether it's dollar, peso, or euro, whatever currency it is, right? So there's kind of four pieces to it, government, central bank, commercial banks, business individuals. So all of these really play a big part in the system. And so for me, it's actually a bit of a trick question, because there's economists in different schools that would point to each of these entities. But it's important to remember that it's a dynamic system, right? So for example, during the times of COVID, where the government sent out stimulus checks where they deficit spend and sent out $2,000 and then so on to each citizen, then in that period, the main driver of the change in money supply would be fiscal spending, so the government. But I think recently monetary policies throughout the world has made a big impact. And I think technically the numbers that you see when you go into your bank account, that's actually a debt credit creation of money. So that's resulting from an interaction between commercial banks, so the banks that you go to for deposits, taking out loans that settles credit cards. But obviously that depends on the existence of willing borrowers, right? So that would be business individuals who take on money, or during expansionary cycles, and then during contractionary economic cycles, business individuals might not be willing to take on borrowers. So there'll be a slowing of money supply, right? And for me, a lot of my understanding of this field comes from Bernard Lietaer. He's an economist that was one of the architects of the euro system. So the euro in Europe, that ECB, the way that mechanism works, he was one of the architects of that system. He's a esteemed economics professor. The late professor, he last taught at UC Berkeley. So he defines as an agreement within a community to use something as a means of payment. And I know this is a very like meaty slide. I'll try to work my way through as much as I can. But I think a key takeaway is that the structure of the monetary system that we use, it's not it's not a value neutral system, because of the structural characteristics the system that we use. There's just going to be certain downstream consequences, right? So if you see, there's just going to be consequences such as like inequality and the way that money moves throughout the system. So some institutions, some people are going to have easier access to that, and money tends to go certain places more than others, and that's a necessary consequence of the system that we use. So I'm using the four. I borrowed a lot of the ideas from Lietaer's research, and then I also put in a little bit of my interpretation. So this is the four structural characteristics. That's straight from Bernard Lietaer's research. So he says the monetary system that we use, the money that you're familiar with, it originates in the nation state. So it's either the US dollar, right, the British pound, the Mexican peso, the Chinese yuan. And then two is that it's managed through a central banking system. So what that means is, in the US, you have a Federal Reserve, and in India, you have the Reserve Bank of India, and these the central bank is supposed to support commercial banks. So that's the banks that you actually go to do business at, right? And the third characteristic of it is that it's a fiat system. So fiat currency, that word's been thrown out a lot. So some people say fiat means that it's not backed by nothing. It's backed by nothing. I kind of modify that a little bit and say it's backed by nothing material. So for example, why that distinction matters is that for US dollars, if the government insists on collecting taxes in that currency, I mean, it's backed by the use of force, right? The use of force and taxation. That's not nothing. It's just nothing material in the same, and you understand it more through the alternatives. And the final feature of it is that our money system is created as debt with interest. So money is created when, for example, a mortgage is extended or you use your credit card, right? Because you don't have the money, you're borrowing the money and you're spending it, and the business that you're spending that is recognizing as revenue as if it's real money. So, and I put in, so my interpretation, that's in the bullet points. So through a lot of other background research. So I looked at alternatives and combining it with, there's implications and consequences to why these structural characteristics would result in certain outcomes, right? So in terms of number one, so historically, nation state hasn't been the only one nation state is actually fairly new in human history, right? So before then, the Catholic Church was heavily responsible for regulating commerce and setting laws. And, famously, like a lot of the churches banned usury, which is charging interest. Business and enterprises also kind of issued money. So it's usually called scripts. For example, if you've used gift cards or airline miles, these are kind of currencies that's issued by them, right? And local governments have also had precedents of printing their own currency. So what that means is the implications for that characteristic would be, one is like enforcement, right? So the nation state, they enforce the value of their currency by taxation, by military, by really through force, right? So if they say they appraise your property at this and they want to levy a 1% tax, you have to pay them in US dollars, and that's a part of how they reinforce the value of that, right? Whereas, like, take for example 1,000 years ago when the Catholic Church enforced a lot of these regulations, it's a different mechanism. So they use a lot of the power of the local pastors, right? The appealing to the commandments in the Bible. So a lot of these sort of softer influences, like and also a lot of social shaming mechanisms, really. And something that's historians and economists have agreed is that in a nation state run economy, to achieve full employment, the only reliable mechanism to do that is war. So if you look at the Great Depression during the US history, looking back, historians have agreed that World War II was the deciding factor to help the US recover from the Great Depression, because the need of the nation state was able to mobilize everybody through factory work or like military service, all that, right? So hopefully you guys kind of get what I'm trying to get at in terms of structural characteristics, the implications of that, and also kind of historical alternatives, right? So these are important things when you look at the current monetary system and what other potential systems there are, and the trade-offs and downstream consequences of that. And I'll go through some of these in the following slides. So alternatives to central banking would be free banking or nationalized banks. So for example, in the Soviet Union, the government just nationalized the central bank and commercial banks. So the main central government kind of set the policies for banking and access to loans and credits, right? So and in contrast to the prevailing system currently, which is I'm sure there's a lot of talks about Fed independence and things like that. And one thing that's also an interesting fact is that since the central banking system, we've seen a dramatic reduction in the number of banks. So in the US, 100 years ago, there were about 30,000 banks in the US. Currently, it will be fewer than 3,000 banks, so a reduction of 1/10. And so imagine the population of the US 100 years ago. Population has increased a lot, but banks have actually consolidated and merged. That's actually one of the macro trends, I believe, everywhere in the world that I know of. And for fiat currency, historically there have been gold and silver standards, or it could be backed by natural resources. So, for example, Venezuela backing the currency on their oil reserves. Product services, right? So, for example, airline miles are backed by airlines being able to provide you with flights and means of transportation, right? So fiat currency, it has implications with scarcity and the authority behind it. So fiat currency, since there's nothing material behind it, the value of a fiat currency ultimately derives from artificial scarcity or relative scarcity, meaning that fiat currency is valuable because some people have it and some people don't have it. And the people who don't have it need to work or otherwise earn that money from people who do have it. And that scarcity has to be enforced. So the final point, debt with interest. So alternatives would be interest-free public loans, state-issued paper money, right? These are all things that have worked and have been implemented in history. So in the blockchain space specifically, if you look at an ICO is really a creation of money. Well, from what I know, I'm sure some probably have dabbled with using it as a debt, but if you look at, the initial mint of, for example, Ethereum, all these currencies, they're created not as debt, right? They're just kind of issued for a variety of purposes. So that also informs a lot of the structural outcomes like inequality, competition, and growth, right? So I can get into a little bit more, but I'm just throwing a lot of ideas and a lot of the theory in the space at you guys. Happy to delve into it more, or you guys, I'll send some recommended readings for you guys if you guys are interested. And I do encourage, I think for me, it's the most interesting space and the space that I'm working in. And I think it's going to make a huge impact on the world, really, especially in the coming decades. So I'll go into a free banking era. So this is in the 1800s. So back in the 1800s, in the US, individual banks are allowed to issue any bank notes. So it wasn't, so currently, when you have a US dollar, the $1 bill is a $1 bill. It looks the same everywhere. It doesn't matter if you bank with Wells Fargo or Citibank or, Chase Bank, whatever, right? But back in the day, every bank would issue their own note. So these are some of it's kind of some people still save it to this day for art, but it was just a very interesting time where banks had to establish kind of like exchange relationships with other banks. And when one bank went bankrupt, their bank notes are no longer recognized. And if you were a business, actually, there would be every once in a while they will have binders and pamphlets informing them, these banks are credit worthy, these banks just failed, so stop accepting these banknotes as payments. You may think that's a very primitive system, but recently economists and historians have pointed to this as one of the engines for the American westward expansion. So that was when the era where the railroads and Americans start expanding rapidly from the East colonies to California all the way to the West Coast, right? So keep in mind the pros and cons and kind of how we use this framework of these characteristics, right? So it was not managed through a central bank system. It was ostensibly backed by gold and silver and whatever these banks were backing their banknotes with. And some of the contemporary use cases you can see. So one use case that's fairly popular in the blockchain space is that a lot of blockchain companies have started paying employees or awarding grants and whatnot in the tokens that they issue. And even with traditional businesses, you can see some of these happening as well. So, for example, Chick-fil-A was approved to pay out a legal settlement in Chick-fil-A gift cards. So keep in mind that when Chick-fil-A gives you a gift card, it's an IOU, right? So they're not taking that out of their revenue. They're not taking that from bank financing. They're kind of just fronting. It's an IOU from Chick-fil-A that becomes real when you go back and buy chicken sandwiches, right? So, and then one thing that's very exciting that's relevant to AI would be, so Microsoft, it's a detail that a lot of people didn't pick up on, and I'm happy to point it out because I'm in this space and this is like what I pay attention to, really. So when Microsoft invested in OpenAI, half of that investment was actually in Azure credits. So that's Microsoft's Azure cloud platform, letting OpenAI build their infrastructure and models on the Azure cloud platform, which is also, in exchange for equity. So that's an actually investment purpose, right? And some of the more civil kind of other use cases. So, for example, in Japan, they have a ledger system. It's called Furai People. So it keeps track of senior care. So a lot of people would volunteer and help. There's a big problem with senior citizens in Japan who don't have kids or don't have someone to look after them, and it helps people to just even check up on them and just help them kind of like feel connected and in that way. So, and it tracks it by hours. That would be the unit that they use. And one interesting thing to, because it's live AI, wanted to tie this into AI. So Sam Altman has, talked a lot about UBI, Universal Basic Income, and an idea that he's proposed I found very interesting is that he wanted to implement a unit called Universal Basic Compute, right? He said people will get a slice of the computational power. So I was wondering, because I'm putting on my like monetarist hat on to analyze the situation. So because AI systems are dynamic systems, just like monetary systems, right? So these AI models, they improve over time. People contribute it in different ways. For example, what if, somebody submits a pull request into the open source repository? Do you kind of award them for improving the model? Because, and what if, NVIDIA comes out with a newer, more advanced chip that can have more computational power? Does that allow, for example, ChatGPT to issue more of these universal basic computes? And how are they going to inject that into the economy? Who gets it? What is it being used for? It's all very interesting concepts to think of. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys might probably already decided on what projects you guys want to work on, but yeah, I thought they were just kind of relevant to AI, how monetary system design really impacts every field, really. I'll talk a little bit about script ledgers. So this is what we did. So we looked at gift cards as enterprise issued currencies, and we saw that a lot of the serial card, a lot of the older infrastructure of gift cards were very archaic. So what we did was we did QR code integrated with a mobile solution. So where you can use a QR code to check, and then there will be a scratch off ticket where if a user unlocks it, the balance gets loaded into their mobile wallet. You have a mobile component where you can send it, because this is all settled on the blockchain. So all of it will feel very, very much like, for example, if you have, let's say euros or pesos or dollars in your bank account, you can securely send it, track the balance. And for example, we also have an exchange market. So for example, the businesses that integrate with us, they can directly exchange through their token. So there will be an exchange rate depending on what they do with their money, right? So let's say like a business is doing like heavy investment, there might be a lot of money flowing out there, but they may not experience inflation against other brands. So this is really kind of building kind of a parallel payment and currency system that's going back to this framework, right? So it would be, instead of originating from nation states, it finds its origin in businesses and enterprises. Instead of being managed through central banking system, it's going through, some of the bigger businesses may make sense to go through a franchise model, letting franchises kind of issue and sell gift cards, or kind of just pay suppliers, workers, or like send charitable donations through that currency. It's backed by products and services, right? So you see how the structural differences will result in kind of different outcomes in the economy. Yeah. Yeah. So lastly, some of the recommended readings, if you guys are really interested in the space. So, obviously Leah Tare, he's probably the most prominent academic in this space. There's also Galbraith. This is actually one of Galbraith's lesser known books. Galbraith's written on the Great Depression, the Great Crash, is written on the modern economy extensively. And James Scott, Seeing Like a State. Yeah, so yeah, that's everything I have. Yeah, hopefully, I was able to introduce you guys to a lot of concepts, ideas, philosophies in this space. Happy to do that. Happy to help you guys out if you guys ever are interested in implementing something like this, because there's so many configurations and so many ways system like this can help um, people, and just so many things. So yeah, but that's all from me. Yeah, back to you, Scotty.
Yeah, that was yeah, great. Thank you. Sorry, I was pulling up your LinkedIn so I can show everyone, and then you finished and called me right as I was about to pull it up. So okay, now I can screen share that. So yeah, in case anyone wants to find Joseph, connect with him, you can see him here. You can see the URL up here. So yeah, anyone who wants to connect with Joseph, we definitely want to give you that opportunity to do that. So yeah, I'm going to stop my screen share there. That's probably enough for them to see what it looks like. So yeah, thank you, Joseph, for that. Hope everyone can find him on LinkedIn. We definitely have a little bit of time. We planned this way so we can kind of do a bit of a Q&A. If anyone has questions, you can type it into the chat, or you can turn your camera on and ask, or I guess not your camera or audio. I'll go ahead and start off and ask. It is kind of repeating what we did when Asia wasn't awake, was awake. So Joseph, for you, how did how did the idea of Script Ledger come up at all in the first place? Before you even got to Live AI, how did that happen? How did that lead to your team working on both campuses at Duke and Harvard?
Yeah, definitely. So I think originally Bitcoin really kind of caught fire, was got mainstream attention when I was in college. And when I was in college, I thought, um, I was like, this sounds kind of like a scam. I really didn't believe it at first, but read more into it. I think so. Bitcoin really started after 2008, and a lot of the financial problems and the systemic problems of 2008 really, even to this day, are not resolved, are not fixed. And really inspired by a lot of met people in the space. Really, I think in the early days there were a lot of true believers, but obviously making a return on crypto investments is nice, but I was just really committed to the vision of seeing how it could, really come up with a different system that can, help really, as many people as we can. And I really do think. Oh, one thing I didn't mention was that why I think the space I'm in is called like alternative monetary system, or complementary currency systems. I think with all the problems that we're seeing, for example, government is so much in debt that they're looking to slash a lot. So that's called austerity politics, right? That's going to hurt a lot of people, and a lot of the systemic issues like inequality, unemployment, all of these things. I really do believe that looking into economics and the history and combining with the technology advances what we have, we can really make a difference in everyday people's lives and make a big impact. So was kept dabbling around, you know, uh, talked to a lot of people, went to different events, but Live AI was kind of the first time where I was like, I'm going to sit down with a group of people. We're going to try to prototype, really, actually making it more and more real, which we're still working on. Every day we're trying to make forward progress, and whether that's signing up people, whether it's attending events, getting our name out, like speaking to people, educating people about the space, so um, yeah, that's kind of how uh, we set the vision, chart the course.
All right. And then for you, meeting your teammates, because I think you guys originally had three teammates. You originally had three teammates and then it became just two. Go and tell people how you ended up working with a team that was on different campuses.
Yeah. So, yeah, I really, I thought it was like a really interesting arrangement, like a really interesting format where Live AI had a global component and different campuses. A couple of my teammates, I thought they were going to be on campus at Duke, but yeah, so I was like in the week following up to the hackathon, I was like kind of introducing myself, putting the material, like made a little bit of like infographics so people know what I wanted to do. So, and then, was able to, a couple of people reached out to me and wanted to, work together and get something to present. So that's how I met my team. But
And then how did y'all work together across campuses? Once you realized we're on different campuses, I bet that was not necessarily an inconvenience, but definitely a bit of a wrinkle because most hackathons you have to be in person at the same place. Where in our case, uh, y'all figured out how to work remotely. How'd y'all make that happen?
yeah. So we try to put in a system where we will do like a 15-minute check-in every couple hours just to make sure we're not working to like out of sync and we're keeping each other accountable. So that's how we managed to make it work. Still obviously like some hiccups in here and there, but yeah.
Um, so after y'all won, you then moved into, uh, I guess, kind of, you went from here's an MVP you won. You guys went into, I guess, now saying you have a hackathon, or not a hackathon. You have a hackathon winning project. That now you're gonna say, okay, great, we're gonna turn to a company. How did that discussion happen, and what led to you getting involved with Miami Tech Week and presenting there?
Yeah. Actually we didn't really like rush into making a company because we well mostly I thought that there's no, especially I think when you're doing something innovative, I wanted to like take our time to speak to as many people as we can. We spoke to people from large corporations, we spoke to small businesses, we talked to like ordinary people, gotten you know good feedback, just a range of feedback that we can learn from. So we're and wanted to go to as many places as we can, meet as many different people as we can. Kind of like talked about the idea, talked about the project at Miami Tech Week. Got invited there to for their kind of expo showcase. Got a lot of feedback, especially from good feedback from consumers, and we identified the gaps where we need to work on, who we need to talk more. So that's kind of how we, um, like that's how we kind of put one foot in front of the other and move forward.
Right. Good stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and show everyone. Uh, Here's the Devpost page from last year. This is a Script Ledger's page, so you can see they won quite a few prizes, and you can. That's where you can also see. Wait a minute, some of these are different places, and it's like we said, yeah, they want some stuff at Duke, Global, Harvard. So, if you want to check out their page, you can see all of these, all these things. And yeah, it's just one of those things. So yeah, everyone can see, this was last year. Uh, there's a lot of great projects came from both campuses, but then yeah, it was very rare to see a team that did both campuses. And we also had one of your teammates actually was on another team, so he won. His project won, or both of his teams won at Harvard, and one of them was the cross campus team for Script Ledger. So it was definitely one of those things where, you know, how did everyone juggle all this stuff? But yeah, we definitely appreciate you guys had a lot of fun, and for y'all to come back and be speakers at the second edition of Live AI Ivy Plus, it's definitely great to bring people back. So um I think the main thing really is now that you've signed some people onto your system. I guess, are you still in that phase of still getting more people signed on, or are you trying to move into the next phase? Kind of where do you stand right now for Script Ledger?
Yeah, we're still fairly early on in the customer acquisition now, starting to do pilot programs with some of the local businesses. Yeah, I think usually what they say with startup is like you want to get 100 users that really love you. So I think we're still working on signing up people. But when it gets to like a point where we just want to make the system and make the service like really good for the users that we have before expanding it more. So we're somewhere around there. Product complete, still a little bit of testing, and obviously you're gonna get more feedback and run into some issues as we're doing the pilot. So looking forward to chasing that down, making it as good as we can. Um, so yeah. So I think yeah, as with I think any companies that are making kind of a new product or service, refine, iterate.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The life cycle of a startup is very difficult. When I did some stuff um so during the pandemic, starting off with the European Commission, we had 30,000 people at an online hackathon, and we would have the winners go into the market or the European Innovation Council's COVID platform, which is our incubator. The main thing was some teams we would put straight in, other teams would partner them with, say, the city of Amsterdam or the NHS, the British health system, and others. Actually, I helped a German company get connected to a bunch of Midwestern chambers of commerce. We basically just looked at a map, said, all right, every town with a German name like Bismarck, they definitely have a lot of Germans, or at least an affinity for Germany. Let's get you connected, get you working together. So some of them actually did not go into the incubator right away. Some got some real world stuff done. Some went into the incubator first. Also probably got real world stuff done, just depending on their situation. We would kind of put them through different life cycles. And it's one of those things where uh, your idea could start anywhere. It could be built anywhere at any time. It just really comes down to there's different ways to get to the endpoint you want. And, so obviously anyone who thinks, wait, why Joseph do it that way? Well, that's fine. You're not the same kind of person. So you might build yours in a different way. Someone else might say, Joseph did the exact right thing. Well, that's great. Maybe you're that kind of person. In the end, we just want you to hear there are a lot of ways to win hackathons. There are a lot of ways to get into the real world market. There's different ways to go about it. And the main thing is this is Joseph's story. We hope that his story helped you figure out how you might approach your life, uh, and on a smaller scale, how you might build your hackathon projects and take it forward. So, I guess, Joseph, I should probably pull up your LinkedIn one more time to close it out so people can see. I think the main thing really is just letting people get a sense of who you are, what you do, how they can find you. And okay, here it is. And yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to chime in. Uh, also we'll be posting this stuff on Discord, so the link will be available. And then obviously, Joseph, you have the video links and all that, so you're going to be able to share on LinkedIn and wherever else. So yeah, we just want to make sure everyone feels like there's a lot of different ways to do this. It's not that there's one way to do it. This is one of the ways to do it. So, hopefully it gives you some idea of how you might want to do it in your own life.
Any questions from the audience? I guess not.
All right. Yeah, because in fairness, we already did this last night,
Yeah.
so it is a slightly different and experience, different crowd. So, I think you covered everything pretty well. So, thank you everyone for joining us. Feel free to connect with Joseph here on LinkedIn. Hopefully, hopefully you have a great time with the rest of the hackathon. We do have one more speaker. It's actually a fireside chat And for everyone who has been hearing about the amazing speakers that Harvard has had, how much fun they've had over there, one of them is going to be on, and he's going to be talking, chatting with a friend. So it's going to be a lot of fun, great energy. So I would say since it's we have 8 minutes till that one, we're gonna go ahead and get ready for that. So everyone go take a break, get some water, snacks, food, whatever you want, and we will see you in a few more minutes. Oh, and that's right. Dinner will be served soon on both campuses. So hope you enjoy the food coming in. I think it's Sally's Sandwiches at Harvard and Devil's Pizza at Duke. So everyone just grab a few slices, a few sandwiches, enjoy your food. And of course, think of this the next episode as a TV show. So enjoy your food, enjoy the episode, and good luck with the rest of the event. Take it easy, everyone.